The best bumper music in Fresno, ladies and gents. This is Right to Life Radio on AM 1680 The Answer. Thank you so much for tuning in. On the line with us today is Mr. Greg Burt. Greg is the Director of Capital Engagement for California Family Council, or Capital Outreach and Engagement, or something like that, for California Family Council, which is a very good friend of Right to Life and a good friend of our show. Greg lives in Sacramento, works in the Capitol, talking with legislators about some of the important pro-life or issues, or really, I guess, the anti-life bills that are frequently introduced in the California state legislature. So, Greg, thank you so much for being on with me today.
Hey, I'm glad to be on, John. Thanks.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what's going on up in Sacramento. There's a particular bill, Assembly Bill 569, that is of concern to our organization in particular, and to a lot of pro-lifers throughout the state. You were just at a hearing about it. So tell us a little bit about what that bill does.
Sure. AB 569 was in the Senate Labor and Industrial Relations Committee yesterday, and this bill is particularly targeting pro-life organizations. It's sponsored by NARAL, Pro-Choice California, and it's more or less telling pro-life organizations, churches, schools, that they can't have any codes of conduct related to what they call reproductive rights. Now, these are codes of conduct for employees. Mm-hmm. So, and reproductive rights is always code for abortion, contraception. So now this would make sense if, an employee was working for a grocery store, and, it's obvious that an employer shouldn't be telling the worker of a grocery store what contraception issues or abortion, but we're talking about employees that actually work for pro-life organizations that are set up particularly to promote pro-life values. Right. And so to tell a private church, Christian school, or pro-life organization that they can't have pro-life behavior requirements for their employees is a direct violation of religious liberty. And so This has been going through, it already passed through the Assembly, and now it's into the Senate, and it, went through the Senate with hardly any objections, which is one of the sad things. Went through. I think there was only 5 people on the committee, and 1 person voted against it, 3 for it.
Right, and just to crystallize this for people, I mean, here at Right to Life of Central California, what we do is pro-life education and outreach and things like that. Basically what this bill would do, if I have like an educational employee, someone I'm paying to spread pro-life views and opinions and speech.
Yeah.
If that educational employee herself has an abortion, I cannot fire her. I cannot take any adverse employment action against her, because basically having an abortion is protected. Yeah. I can't do anything. Yeah, because basically having an abortion becomes a protected employment category the same way that, say, race is, or sex, or sexual orientation, all these different categories where I can't fire someone just for being black. I can't fire someone for being Latino. I will be unable to fire someone just because they had an abortion, even though it runs totally counter to the whole purpose of my organization's existence.
Yeah.
Yeah. And beyond this, so we really have kind of, beyond this, Greg, maybe you can speak a little bit to just how sort of lackluster the review of these bills is. I mean, the Senate Labor Committee is hearing so many of these bills. They have very few members. You mentioned a little bit how few objections you heard from the senators in the Labor Committee. Can you sort of explain your sort of disappointment at how this is being reviewed in the California legislature?
Well, this is a Senate committee, so there's only 40 senators. So the Labor Committee only has 5 members. So there's only 1 Republican. His name is Senator Jeff Stone. He voted against the bill, but I was in the hearing for like 2 hours before the bill came up, and he was very engaged in asking lots of detailed questions about all the other bills. But when it came to this bill, he was silent. Not a single question about religious liberty, about because you look at the analysis of the bill, and it includes both arguments for and against. And there was a big section, 3 long paragraphs, talking about our arguments. And we brought up religious liberty issues. Actually, there was an attorney there for the California Catholic Conference, and talking about the importance of religious liberty and how this violates religious liberty. Not a single question. There's like this, the Constitution is being violated, and you can't even get the opponent to stand up for religious liberty. It was a little discouraging.
Yeah, and beyond religious liberty, I mean, I think you could even make arguments about freedom of speech that essentially especially for certain kinds of organizations, that like, how can I effectively, as an as an organization at Right to Life and your organization, California Family Council, that is dedicated towards presenting certain viewpoints, advocating certain viewpoints in favor of life, how can we effectively do that if we're not allowed to make employment decisions, where we would get rid of employees who are acting in a way that's utterly contrary to our stated viewpoint that we want to present? Again, if I have an educational employee who has an abortion, I cannot fire them. That just seems like it utterly undercuts my ability to speak.
No, one of the good arguments that the attorney from the Catholic Conference brought up is put this in the context of a political organization. If you let's say you're part of the Democratic Party, and you've hired employees to promote the Democratic platform, and then you find out that one of your employees is out there, promoting a Republican in public and volunteering on their campaigns. Would you not? And they're doing their own personal time. Well, but would you not have a right to say, you know what, you can't do that? Well, of course you would, because it would affect the Democratic Party's ability to promote its message if its employees can, on the side, undercut all their messages on their personal time. So it makes complete sense when you're talking about something else. But if people are, abortion and contraception, it's a personal thing, and people think, how can you possibly let anybody, your employer, tell you you can't or can't do that? They're not thinking, well, I need to apply this
through one step further.
I need to apply this to other organizations, and so it's. But one thing I want to bring up is, and this is one of the criticisms I've heard from some of the legislators about why they don't speak up more. If you look on the analysis, it lists all the supporters of both sides. Do you know how many supporting organizations were on their side for this bill?
Millions and millions, and not nearly enough on
over
on
200.
Right.
4.5 pages of organizations on here. Everything from all these different unions, to, of course, all the Planned Parenthood associations, the Nursing Association, American Civil Liberties. You got all these companies, just endless numbers. And then you look at how many people opposed, how many groups opposed it.
And not nearly enough.
Well, okay, Greg, can you hang on with us through the break, and we'll talk about some of the stuff that's happening with funding for embryo-destructive stem cell research.